Okay, let's dive in. We're looking at this really quite extraordinary legal situation at the very top of the British monarchy. Today's deep dive, it's all about the Royal Lodge, that huge place in Windsor Great Park. And specifically, this ironclad 75-year lease. It's causing a real clash between Prince Andrew and his brother, King Charles. So our mission today is to really unpack the details of this legal agreement, understand how the situation has changed so dramatically, and I suppose to pinpoint exactly what leverage the king actually has here. And here's the kicker, the fact that really sets everything up. There's a contract signed way back in 2003. It means Prince Andrew can legally live in that massive 30-room house, totally rent-free, until 2078. Think about that. The king might be the king, but he's running up against the limits of his power because of this one document.
Yeah, it's fascinating, isn't it? Because it's not just a family disagreement about, who gets the big house. It's really a clash between old legal agreements, the push for a more modern monarchy, and, well, money, lots of it. To really get the current picture, we need to go back. Why was this 75-year deal even made?
Exactly. Let's start with the asset itself, the Royal Lodge. I mean, we're talking a 30-room mansion. It's Great Tech listed, sits on nearly 100 acres of prime parkland. It's huge.
And symbolic, too. The Queen Mother lived there for, almost 50 years. It was her beloved home.
Right. Andrew moved in around 2004, but the lease itself was signed just before that in 2003.
And back then, the place was, well, let's be honest, it was falling apart. Listed, yes, but crumbling. Serious problems. Roofs, plumbing, electrics, all needed major work. The estimates just to fix it were massive. So the Crown Estate Commissioners, they're the ones who manage all the royal properties, sort of like the portfolio managers. They struck a deal. A long-term deal with Andrew back in 2003. It was basically a trade. Andrew had to fund this huge renovation project, multi-million-pound job. The figure usually quoted is around 7.5 million pounds, and sources suggest he actually had to borrow that money.
Wow, hold on. 7.5 million pounds. That is a serious amount of money to borrow just for a place to live. So what did he get for essentially footing the bill to save this national asset?
He got that 75-year lease, and crucially, it was at what's called a peppercorn rent.
Peppercorn, meaning tiny, right? Nominal.
Exactly, just a token amount. For the first 10 years, it was literally £1 per year. But here's the really critical part, the fine print. For the remaining 65 years of that lease, the rent is zero. Absolutely nothing.
Okay, let me get this straight. The lease runs to 2078. 10 years at £1 a year ended in 2013. So he hasn't legally had to pay any rent for, over a decade now?
That's right.
And he won't have to pay a penny in rent for another 54 years.
54 years. That's the deal. It's incredibly rigid.
Incredible.
It is. You could argue he essentially paid his rent up front with that massive renovation investment. It was a deal that made sense, in that specific context.
Right.
Reward a senior royal, fix a crumbling building for the Crown Estate. Win-win, sort of.
And that's the key, is the context.
Yeah.
Because the world of 2003 is just gone.
Yeah.
Back then, Andrew was a working royal. He'd been in the Navy. He was the UK's trade representative. The deal looked sensible from an institutional view.
Now, fast forward to today. Totally different story. Andrew's a non-working royal now. King Charles stripped him of his military roles, his patronages, all in the wake of the Epstein scandal. Plus, there was that very public civil sexual assault case settled in 2022. The settlement, reportedly around £12 million, is widely thought to have been paid, or at least facilitated, by the late Queen. So the whole backdrop against which that lease was signed, it's just unrecognizable today.
Which brings us to King Charles's motivation. Why does he want Andrew out so badly? Well, his big project is streamlining the monarchy, isn't it? Making it leaner, more modern, more fiscally responsible in the public eye.
Exactly. And the Royal Lodge situation completely cuts against that. You've got a non-working royal living in this enormous 30-room mansion. Just the security costs, never mind the upkeep, funded publicly. It looks terrible, especially now. The optics are just awful for a king trying to show value for money.
And the king has an alternative in mind, right? Frogmore Cottage.
Yes, the place Harry and Meghan used to live. Still a very substantial property, but much smaller, much less of a drain, much less symbolic baggage, perhaps.
Seems reasonable. But Andrew's reaction, reports say he's digging in his heels.
He's asserting his legal rights under the lease. He says he won't move.
And the king can't just, rip up the contract signed by the Crown Estate. So what's the move? How does Charles actually apply pressure?
Well, this is where it gets really interesting. It comes down to the financial plumbing of the monarchy. The king can't legally evict him based on the lease. The lease is solid on rent, but the lease doesn't cover the running costs. And that's the pressure point.
The day-to-day expenses of keeping a place like that going.
Precisely. And we're not talking small change here. Maintaining a grade 2 listed building of that size, it's enormous.
Give us an idea. What kind of figures are we talking about annually?
Look, estimates vary, but realistically, you're probably looking at somewhere between, say, 250,000 pounds and 400,000 pounds a year, minimum. Just think about heating 30 rooms through a British winter, utilities, groundskeeping, essential repairs, staff. It adds up fast.
Right. $250,000 to nearly £500,000 a year. That's the vulnerability. But where was Andrew getting that kind of money before? How did he cover those costs?
Historically, it came from two main places: his naval pension, which wouldn't cover much of that, and critically, an allowance, money given to him by his mother, the late queen, and specifically that allowance came from her private income, the Duchy of Lancaster.
Okay, this is the crucial bit. This elevates it beyond just a family argument. Explain the difference for us. Crown estate versus Duchy of Lancaster. Why does that distinction matter so much?
It's absolutely key. The Crown Estate owns the Royal Lodge. Think of it as a huge, independent commercial property business. Its profits go to the UK Treasury, and in return, the government provides the sovereign grant to fund the monarchy's official duties. Andrew's lease agreement is with the Crown Estate. They made a deal, and they're legally stuck with it.
Okay, and the Duchy.
The Duchy of Lancaster is different. That's the monarch's private estate. It's the king's personal money tot, essentially. When Queen Elizabeth died, control over the duchy's assets and, crucially, the power to decide who gets money from it.
Yeah.
That passed directly and solely to King Charles.
Ah, I see. So the king doesn't need to challenge the Crown Estate lease at all. He just controls the other pot of money. The private funds Andrew was relying on for the running costs, he can simply turn off the tap.
That's exactly the lever he can pull. He's not breaking the lease agreement, he's just stopping the private financial support. He's making it financially impossible, or at least incredibly difficult, for Andrew to actually afford to live there. And remember that £7.5 million renovation cost, the debt Andrew reportedly took on.
Yeah?
If he's still servicing that debt, and suddenly he also has to find, say, £300,000 or £400,000 extra every year just for basic upkeep, well, you can see how the numbers might not work anymore.
And that makes it a much tougher position for Andrew. Suddenly, the rent-free house isn't free at all.
Yeah.
It becomes this huge financial liability costing hundreds of thousands a year to run, possibly on top of existing debt. It's a way to force a move without actually breaking the lease. Financial exhaustion, essentially.
That seems to be the strategy. Using the distinct legal structures, the Crown Estate holds the property lease. The Duchy holds the personal purse strings to achieve his aim indirectly.
Okay, let's zoom out a bit now, because this isn't just about the family dynamics, is it? This whole situation raises bigger questions. Public trust, transparency. The optics, as you said earlier, are pretty bad, especially right now in the UK.
They really are. Think about it. The Crown Estate manages property ultimately for public benefit. Its profits go to the Treasury. Then the public reads about this controversial, non-working royal living rent-free in one of its prime assets until he's potentially 118 years old. It fuels perceptions of, entitlement, poor management, lack of accountability, and that directly clashes with the image of a modern, efficient monarchy King Charles wants to project.
It also throws up this weird constitutional point, doesn't it? The king, who's supposed to be the head of state, is sort of powerless to undo a legal deal made years ago, even if it's damaging his agenda now.
It really highlights that tension, the tension between a monarch trying to modernize and the weight of past agreements. The Crown Estate operates almost like a separate entity in this. It signed a commercial contract. If it just broke the lease, imagine the legal chaos. It could face huge claims, undermine confidence in all its other leases. So the contract has to stand, really, no matter how awkward or embarrassing it is for the current king.
So the house, the Royal Lodge, it's become this symbol, hasn't it? It's like the physical representation of Andrew's last sort of legally protected foothold within the royal setup, all thanks to a piece of paper from 2003.
Absolutely. His refusal to leave is, in a way, a direct challenge to the king's authority and vision. But his ability to stay, at least legally in terms of rent, shows that even a king has limits. He's bound by legal precedent, too.
So what we're likely watching is a really uncomfortable, drawn-out, a game of royal chicken, set to play out potentially for years, and that lease, amazingly, still has 54 years left to run.
It really forces you to think about the nature of monarchical power today. It's not absolute. It's constrained by law, by parliament, and yes, by contracts signed by previous generations.
And maybe that's the thought to leave everyone with. The sheer power of a legal document signed 2 decades ago to effectively tie the hands of the current king. It really makes you question, doesn't it? What are the real limits of a monarch's power when faced with these kinds of binding agreements from the past? Definitely something to ponder.